Hello, I hope you're doing well today as we begin our week of Advent where we set aside the theme is love. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, is what John 3:16 says. God loved us in this way, that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. At the right time, he died for us, as we read in Romans chapter 5. Then when we were far away from God, in Romans chapter 5, starting in verse 6, when we were far away, when we were enemies, we were at odds with God, God loved us in this way, that he sent his only begotten Son. So in Romans chapter 5, verse 6, we see, for we were still helpless. At the right time, Christ died for the ungodly. For rarely will someone die for a just person, though for a good person perhaps some might even dare to die. But God proves his own love for us, that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Think about that. Jesus would say that it says there that there's no greater love than someone who would die for a friend. And all across the world, our soldiers have died for people. They've died for our freedoms. They've died for our ability to have freedom of speech, freedom of religion, the right to bear arms, the right to have an opinion, the right to pursue happiness, all of these things. The freedom to govern ourselves as we see fit. But those are ideals that are worth fighting for. But what about the people you don't like? Or even better yet, the people that don't like you? In Romans chapter 5, verses 6 through 8, the love of God, we see that we were helpless. It says we were still helpless and we were ungodly, but at the right time, Christ died for us. We see, one, that we were helpless. Two, we see that we were ungodly. You know, a person, like I said, will die for their friends, but what about people that don't like you? In verse 3, we see that, in number 3, we see that God proves his love while we were still at odds with him. God proved his love. John 3:16, for God loved us in this way. What way did he love us? He loved us in this way. While we were still helpless, he died for the ungodly. That is godly love. That is a love that we have to cherish. That is a love that we should embrace. That is a love that, as Paul says in Philippians, that he draws us near to him. In Philippians 4, God draws us near to him. Paul tells us that the love of God, we cannot be separated by death, by mountains, by depth of sea, by sin, anything. Nothing will separate us from the love of God. And that love first came to us while we were still sinners. And that love prompted God to raise from the dead. So I'd ask you to confess Christ as Lord, acknowledge that he is God, and understand the love of God, that for while we were still helpless, at the right time, Christ died for the ungodly, but God proved his own love for us. While we were still sinners, Christ died for us. That means when you were at your absolute worst and hated God the most, he said on the cross, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. So I ask you today, do you confess Christ as Lord? Do you have the forgiveness of sin? Do you understand what it's like to live this life knowing you have a relationship with Christ? I hope you consider him. I hope you'll consider Christ as Lord. The Bible tells us, Jesus told us, if you confess with your mouth and believe in your heart, then you will be saved. I hope you'll understand that at the right time Christ died, and he does love you. Even in a mixed up world, he loved you so much. Even when you were at odds with him, he died for you. God bless.